when I was at sixth form college and I was doing my A-levels, one of my A-levels was in music, and one of the music teachers at sixth form college was a Methodist local preacher, and it was her who invited me to her church to participate in a concert they were holding for Christian Aid. So I took up that offer because I thought it was a good way to practice the pieces that I was learning for my recital. Met some people at the church. It was a really friendly, warm welcome, and it made a huge difference to me to actually start to see these people as really welcoming, something that I'd not really expected to experience. And it was after that point I got to know a few other people, and I was asked whether I'd like to go on the rota to help with music on a Sunday morning. And I thought, well, it's all good practice. And then as time went on, I found that I still wanted to go to church even when I wasn't on the rota for playing. Mm-hmm. So I was starting to want to listen to what the preacher was saying. I wanted to ask questions afterwards. I was getting more inquisitive, you could say. And it was a real gradual coming to faith. But I think it's because I felt so welcomed and so much part of that community that I was able to test out my thoughts and my beliefs. When I became a member of the Methodist Church, I started to attend worship a lot more regularly, and I hadn't received communion up until this point. I decided just not to have communion until I became a member of the church. And it was, I have a very vivid memory of receiving communion for the first time and having an overwhelming sense of God's presence, of love and acceptance. And it was in that moment that I felt that I wanted to be able to offer that to other people. I felt a desire to want to share bread and wine with others, because I had suddenly realised just how significant it was for me on my journey, and I felt that it would be a huge privilege to be able to do that for others. And that didn't make me think, oh, I want to be a minister. It actually it enabled me to think about, well, how can I continue to serve the church beyond being on the music rota, for example. So I spent quite a few years doing the worship leading course, and then coming to the end of that and thinking, I feel God's calling me to continue. So then I trained to be a local preacher, and I'd had lots of encouraging feedback from mentors in the circuit and churches, asking me, have I ever thought about ordained ministry? And it was those questions that took me back to that first experience of communion. And I sort of almost put two and two together at that point and realised that I probably haven't felt finished or accomplished in this calling, because I've yet to share bread and wine. And it was at that point that I realised that I was called to ordained ministry as a presbyter. One of the huge things that has stood out for me in these first few years of ministry is the privilege it is to actually walk alongside people in lives, in the journey of life, in ups and downs, being able to sit at a bedside of somebody, to pray with them, and to lead their funeral. The huge responsibility, but also the privilege of being in that role where you can be alongside people in their worst moments, but also life's most joyous times as well. And although I think I probably knew that to an extent before being in ministry, actually being in that position has just felt so profound so far in my experience of ministry is God likes to show up in those places when almost you least expect it. So I had one example of just being Jason in the community. I wasn't working, didn't have a collar on. I'd just gone for a coffee with my husband, and somebody in the coffee shop recognised who I was. She said, "Oh, are you the vicar? Did you do such and such a person's funeral last week?" Oh yes, that was me. And it opened up a huge conversation where this woman opened up to me. She shared some things about her life and about her struggles with faith, and how she longed to have some answers for some questions in her life. And I wasn't able to give her all of the answers she wanted, but I listened to her, and I think that made a huge difference. And as a result, she's somebody that I see maybe every few months. We meet up for a coffee and we have a conversation together. And I've really sensed God in that. It's been a long journey. It's been a really significant one. I've learned a lot about myself. I've grown as a person of faith. And I feel a sense of humility that the church has said that you're worthy for this. You've done what we expected you to do, and we're ready to say yes now.